Sadiq Khan. It surprises me, astounds me and worries me in equal measure the percentage of the British public that still don't know the full extent of the people that Sadiq Khan used to associate himself with and even defend, and the types of things he used to get up to before he became the Mayor of London. That's what we'll be discussing today on the Hoggcast. Okay, let's jump straight into it. But before we start, if you could, by all means, subscribe, hit the notification bell, maybe like the video and leave a comment because that really helps me out. I'm trying to grow a community here and I would love it if you could be a part of that. Okay, let's get into it.
Any country in the world to have an exclusion order on Minister Farrakhan. Minister Farrakhan has been to trips to Israel, to Canada, to Australia, to Europe, and there's been no problems at all, and no refusal of him being allowed in. He's been to South Africa as well. Wherever he's been, there has been no problems. His trips have been well received. There has never been any problems or any hint of any problem.
That was no other than a fairly young Sadiq Khan acting as a lawyer for not only the Nation of Islam, but Mr. Louis Farrakhan. I'm sure you don't need me to tell you who he is, but for those of you who may have never heard from him, here is what Mr. Louis Farrakhan is best known for.
International bankers financed Hitler, and poor Jews died, while big Jews were at the root of what you call the Holocaust. Why don't you tell that? Little Jews dying, while big Jews made money. Little Jews being turned into soap, while big Jews washed themselves with it. Jews playing violin, Jews playing music, while other Jews marching into the gas chambers. See, if your enemies are little punks out there, you ain't nothing. I mean, you can use a little something. But if your enemy is the government of the United States of America, must be something to you. The satanic Jews that control everything and mostly everybody. If they are your enemy, then you must. Now that nation called Israel never have had any peace in 40 years, and she will never have any peace because there can be no peace structured on injustice, thievery, lying, and deceit, and using the name of God to shield your dirty religion under his holy and righteous name.
Only one word there was out of place. I never used the word gutter. I used the word dirty.
Now, save the lighter until you bring it to its apex, which is this that you see, this Caucasian. Caucasian mean weak-blooded, weak-boned, stale face. That pale, what the Indian call a pale man. Huh?
Now, I don't need to tell you that pretty much everything you just heard from Louis Farrakhan's anus of a mouth was complete and utter tosh. Now, I could do a response video, I could do a whole video on Louis Farrakhan and the divisive, hateful rubbish that he comes out with, but that's beyond the scope of this video. This video is about Sadiq Khan, and I am merely demonstrating to you, before we move on, the type of people that Sadiq Khan ingratiates himself with. Okay, so now on to the man himself, Mr. Sadiq Khan. I'm going to start with the video of Mr. Sadiq Khan in defence of 3 British nationals, and I use that term British nationals lightly, and I'm sure you can understand what I mean by that, who were arrested in Egypt for trying to revive an outlawed Islamic terrorist organisation in the country. Things have changed as of now in 2019. This video was taken quite some time ago, probably before Sadiq Khan ever thought he would end up becoming the Mayor of London and had to therefore wash all his dirty laundry somewhere. In the video, Mr. Sadiq Khan can be clearly heard defending the men and stating that their confessions were allegedly procured by what he calls torture. However, now that Egypt has gone down the route of Islamic fundamentalism, Egypt now is essentially controlled by people who are most certainly Wahhabists and follow the more strict, more traditional, more conservative line of Islam. But at the time of this incident, they were still a secular state, just like Britain's a secular state. However, there are plenty of people here in the United Kingdom, elsewhere as well in the Western world, who, if they had their way, this country would go down the same route that Egypt and other countries in the Middle East have gone down.
Une stratégie qui inquiète sa mère venue spécialement de France.
N'importe qui qu'il veut être enfermé dans cet état, qui ne voit pas le jour, qui ne voit pas la nuit, qu'il a la lumière sur la tête tout le temps, qu'il n'a aucune information, il peut dire n'importe quoi et n'importe comment.
Moving on, we get to his most ridiculous statement, in which he states that Islamic extremism and terrorist attacks of this nature are all part and parcel of, quote unquote, living in a big city. Of course, it's not hard at all to call Sadiq Khan out on this in any way, shape or form. A quick cursory search on the internet of many of the world's countries with the biggest cities will show you that these countries and these cities just do not have Islamic inspired extremist atrocities happening, and that's for one reason. I'm sure you can work that out as to why those countries don't have Islamic extremist inspired attacks, and countries in the West, especially since 2015 when good old Angela Merkel opened up the doors to people claiming at least to be refugees, we all of a sudden saw a dramatic increase in these types of atrocities. Next, his tenure as Mayor of London. He has seen knife crime shoot through the roof. Let's take a look. Okay, so this is the chart of London knife crime, which has charted it over the last 6 or so years. Now, the first thing that you can see is, since Sadiq Khan took over as Mayor of London, yes, knife crime has rocketed. That's true. Of course, detractors could say that, well, if you look on the chart, it was also higher in the year or couple of years or so before he became the Mayor of London. That is true. However, a couple of notable exceptions need to be made here. Firstly, if you look in the 2017 to 2018 year, knife crime is the highest it has been in recorded history so far, and we are now approaching the year 2020, and this particular graph does not show the figures for 18 to 19, but in the years 2018 to 2019, the figures for stabbing have already passed 100. Stabbing murders, I might add, the number of people who have been murdered purely by stabbing alone in London is already over 100, and we are only at the beginning of September. And as I said, that is just stabbing. It's not blunt instruments, it's not shooting. We also now have a staggeringly high amount of shootings. In fact, earlier in the year, we actually succeeded New York in numbers of shootings, and we don't have guns. We have no legal permits for guns here. That just and this is just London. That really shows you the state London is in. When the figures come in for the years 18 to 19, which they will when we get to the end of this year, that figure will be far in excess of 40,000. So we can see that Sadiq Khan's tenure as Mayor of London has been for violent crime and for terrorism and a tragedy, but that doesn't bother him because, as we've seen, he only sees terrorism as part and parcel of being in the big city. He has no intention whatsoever of actually doing anything about it, nor does he have any intention of doing anything about knife crime. He's more concerned with policing online hurty-feely words such as my own. I currently am under a severe censorship on Facebook. I can no longer take polls because Facebook and the people who police hurty-feely words simply do not like the results that the polls I was taking were bringing back. And as I said, I can no longer do live videos because they no longer like the things that I like to say. And the things that I like to say are this, and I will leave you with this here, but please don't turn off yet because this is very important. This is a BBC propaganda piece in which they state that London is not the worst place for killings. Now, have you noticed what they've done here? This is homicides in general. It's not knife crime. The problem with London is it has a lot of homicides. It does. I'm going to make that point in a minute, but also it's mainly the knife crimes. It's out of control. It's like a Wild West. It's like a barbarian state. It's like Somalia in the United Kingdom. Now, what they've done here, the BBC, is they've cleverly showed you they've put homicides in together, all of it in together, okay? However, they have not put in London as a whole. If you look, they say London is not the worst place for for killings in general. They've put Inverclyde, which is at the top, it's got homicides per 100,000. Rochdale, City of Manchester, etc., etc. It goes down the list. That bottom one there that my ugly face is blocking is Lewisham. Now, the two in red are places in London. Now, this is the thing. They have broken London up into its constituent districts. All of those other areas on the graph that you see, they all have their own districts. Manchester has its own districts, so does Leicester, so does all of these places. Glasgow's a huge city. Manchester's enormous. Okay, North Warwickshire, for heaven's sakes, that's not even a city, that's a region. So you see what they're doing, they're very snidely and very cleverly mixed regions with cities with districts. Okay, that's how you get this skewed BBC Marxist left-wing fake news trash. Okay, if this was genuinely showing London as a whole, and bearing in mind, this is not even just knife crime, knife murders, this is homicides per 1,000 as a whole, London would be greater than probably all of those together. Probably all of those together. London is a very violent and horrible place, and I certainly hope you've watched as long as this to truly see what the BBC are trying to do here. I think it's disgusting what they do to skew the facts and misrepresent the truth. Sickens me. Okay, I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like the video and leave a comment. That really helps me out. Let's build a community here together. By all means, go and do your own research, from everything to Sadiq Khan to Louis Farrakhan to London homicide rates. I always recommend people do their own research. If they don't, take my word for it. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.